Our next guest created an internet sensation when he said income inequality is a good thing. Joining us now is Richard Epstein. He is the author of Design for Liberty. Richard, welcome to the program.
Glad to be here.
You say inequality, income inequality is a good thing. Make your case.
Well, the simple and most powerful point is that the only way you get hard work out of people is to give them a return on their investment. You want people to enter into voluntary transactions. You want them to produce mutual gain. When it does that, there's some people who are extremely skillful at this thing. You keep the engine turning, they will end up to be highly fortunate. Once they generate that money, they can do all sorts of wonderful things with it in many different ways. One of them, for example, is they can be taxed. The entire economy of the United States depends upon a transfer of taxation from the top 1% to the rest of the economy. You kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Essentially, the issues at the bottom will be disastrous.
Are they correct in saying that income inequality is increasing? We've become increasingly unequal in terms of income. Therefore, that's a good thing?
Well, actually, it's not necessarily even a true thing. If you look at the Gini coefficients, it turns out that they're relatively constant.
Well, what's that?
That's the sort of standard measure of income inequality, so that if you have a high inequality, you have a high Gini coefficient. If you have a low inequality, you have a low coefficient.
Well, they come right back at you and say, wait a second, 30, 40 years ago, the CEO of a company made 17 times what the average worker made. Today, it's 300 times what the average worker makes. I mean, is that accurate?
Well, some of it is accurate, but you have to figure out how many CEOs there are, and you have to figure out the disparity depends upon two things. One, it depends upon movements at the top, but the second thing is it depends on movements at the bottom. And one of the difficulties that we have is that for the bottom tier of labor, the nominal wages are about constant and real wages have fallen sleepy. So if you take that, a threefold decline at the bottom, that all of a sudden gets rid of a lot of the massive stuff at the top. In addition, when you look at the top figures, salaries for chief executives are roughly constant. They've gone down a little bit over the last 10 years. But the term of office is not all that long. Somebody like John Corzine, he does very well for a few years, not so well for some of the years thereafter. So what you do is you make your hay while the sun shines, and then also, of course, what happens is when it doesn't shine, you don't make any hay. And in addition to that, a lot of the compensation turns out to be deferred. Some of that compensation never gets realized. It's a much more complicated feature.
But income inequality is a good thing because it motivates. That's your point. That's your bottom line.
And it's not only that, it also gives capital for major investments, and it also has, in addition to that, a huge positive spillover. One of the tests that you ask is if somebody like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs makes $1 million, what's the benefit into everybody else? And the benefit is what we call consumer surplus, meaning the value that they would pay for those goods above the value or the cost they actually have to pay for it. And that number is 10, 20 times what it is that the one man earns. And so you don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
You've really upset society. You are an internet sensation. Richard Epstein, come on back, please, because there's a lot more to say on this subject.
Yes, there certainly is.
We need more time. Richard, thanks a lot, sir. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.